Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here online this evening. I'm Mr. Reeves. As you know, this is our parent forum about a proposal from Surrey County Council to change the school term dates. And just first and foremost, to let you know that this is being recorded. That will help us share this with any parents who have missed the start or couldn't attend this evening. Throughout the evening, I've got Mr. Lofstadt, Mr. Watson, Mrs. Oates, and possibly Mr. Grafton online, and they're going to manage the Q&A box for me. So if questions are coming in through the Q&A box, which you can see hopefully at the top of your screen, that's the place where you can interact and ask questions as the presentation goes on. If there aren't any questions, if there aren't answers that my colleagues can give, they've got a signal to let me know that there's a question that they want to address to me, and I can take those at appropriate points. But also there'll be time at the end for questions where they will take a note of any questions we haven't been able to answer, and hopefully we can get answers to those to you as well. So that's in the Q&A box, which is at the top of the screen. Um, so, want to start off the meeting just by saying to you that obviously the proposals that have been put through put Thamesmead School in a position where we have to make a decision on something perhaps we weren't expecting to have to consider up until this point. I'm well aware that I may not get a general consensus from all the different stakeholders in this process, but I don't want to make this decision without considering the views of different stakeholders, and particularly parents, because anything, excuse me, affecting our term dates and our holidays will have a big impact upon you. Obviously, I need to be thinking about the factors on the screen here. What's best for learning, what's best for parents, what's going to bring the best experience for the students. But also I have to think about the staff who are working here, what's for their best for their well-being. What impacts could this have on teacher recruitment, particularly in a period of time where teachers are hard to come by, particularly in the southeast of England, and thinking also about the benefits and the challenges of aligning or not aligning with other organisations, other schools, etc. So I've got to take all of these factors into consideration, but I do want to make sure I've consulted with different people to help me make what I believe will be then the best decision for the school. But I know it's not going to be an easy decision, and it's not going to be one where I'm going to please everybody with the decision that we take in the end. So if you're not familiar, the proposal that has come in from Surrey is that they plan to introduce a 2-week half-term break in October. This will be from September 2026. So it's not the next school year, but the following school year. And we're looking at this to give you a year to plan ahead. I know many of you like to book holidays well in advance, etc., and plan your years ahead. So we've got lead-in time on this. You can see from the screen that the Surrey proposal is that half term in October of 2026 will be extended to 2 weeks. And this would obviously take a week of learning out the school calendar. So they've extended the summer term up to the 28th of July, which is obviously where that extra week has gone. It's a very late finish. For example, we're finishing on the 19th of July this summer, so you can see that that's a considerably sort of lengthier summer term that they're putting into place to compensate. It reduces our summer break effectively to 5 weeks, although in 2027, when that summer break will happen, it would actually be just under 5 weeks. I think it's going to be 4 weeks, 4 days with the return to school in September. So we did consult parents on this decision to make the change. It's a practice that's already common in a number of schools, but it wasn't something we as a school were thinking we were going to sort of embrace or change. It was an individual decision made by individual schools or academies. But I think Surrey have made this decision, starting to see some schools where they do it, some schools where they don't. They've consulted with parents, and their consultation had a majority in favour. But I hasten to add that it really was a very small number of parents who responded. I think there were about 2,000 respondents across the whole local authority, and it wasn't much above 50% that voted in favour. Now, bear in mind that we probably have 500 parents at Thamesmead School alone. A response of 2,000 is quite small. Academies have had the freedom to set their own term dates for a long time, and hence why some academies have made this move. But as I said, and I'll explain, it's not something that Thamesmead we were entertaining, and I'll go through the reasons why that was the case. But that's certainly the proposal, that we want to involve you in deciding how we respond as a school, because it will have implications for the students, for you, but also for my staff here and the education we provide. Any questions at all, please put them in the Q&A box and we can get answering those as they come in live. The positives of the Surrey proposal, if we start with seeing about why Surrey might have considered doing something like this. Schools have been looking at a 2-week half-term in October model for a number of years now, some in our local area as well, some quite close to us, because the autumn term is traditionally the longest term, and it can include half terms of 7 or 8 weeks, sometimes 2 half terms of up to 8 weeks, and you feel it at a school. I'm sure your students are more tired at the end of a long half term, your children are more tired, and certainly the staff, as we get towards Christmas, we're really feeling that we've been through the bulk of a big chunk of the school year by that point. And by putting a 2-week half-term holiday in, it does even out the terms to 7.5-week half terms. It has, some schools report where they've done it, had a positive impact overall on attendance across that long term, and they see that fewer children are taking as much time off from school in that period, whether they've got more energy and they are less run down and less prone to picking up bugs and germs, etc., and infections. But the other positive, one of the other positives, is that it would align with any other Surrey schools doing this. The other positives are that it would be positive for recruiting staff, particularly in an environment where other schools are offering a 2-week half-term holiday. It would be positive for staff well-being. It might be a cheaper time for a family to take a holiday, but also it is not necessarily going to mean cheaper holidays overall, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But certainly October is probably a cheaper time to go away than peak summer, for example. So 2 weeks at that point might give you a bit more flexibility. And some families obviously may prefer a shorter summer break. I can see there's been something posted in the chat. If we can try and use the Q&A box for any kind of questions, discussions, we can focus on there. But Mr. Watson, Mr. Lofstad, if you can just check in with the chat there and see what's going on in that discussion. The drawbacks of the Surrey proposal are that we've got a week of school that would be missed if we take an extra week of half-term holiday. This would affect all year groups, but I'm particularly concerned that that's a time when our year 11 students, we want them in school. They have exams in the summer term. They also we have an early Easter that year in 2027, which means exams will start very quickly. And in the autumn, the spring term, we will start our practical exams. So taking a week out of school for year 11 in October does give me a great amount of worry. Also, you know, the summer term, the summer holiday is a long holiday, and to go on to 2 weeks holiday after just being back in school for what would for many students be 6.5 weeks would to me seem quite interrupting to just getting the kids back into the flow, the students back into the flow of being back at school. I think there's some problems with the Q&A not working on Android devices, and if that's the case, then perhaps if you do use the chat, and my colleagues will have to monitor both the chat and the question and answers. Mr. Watson.
Yeah, hello. There's some problems with Android devices not being able to access the Q&A, so we'll monitor both, as you just said, and we'll get answers to through both the Q&A and the chat.
Thanks for jumping on that one so quickly. Thanks, sir. Um, uh, where I'm also concerned is that obviously it puts an extra week of childcare onto you as parents at a time maybe where companies, businesses, employers are less in tune with the idea of children needing time off school at this time of year, and it makes our final half term, the one we're in now, would become our longest week of the year rather than one of those in the first term of the year as well. The other drawbacks, clearly, we're getting tired towards the end of that year. So putting the extra week on at the end of a long year, I'm not sure is helpful. It's getting hotter, as you can see at the moment. Certainly we've had experiences of close over 30 degrees year on year now, and climate change, etc. The summer term is not necessarily a comfortable time to be in school, so another week only increases that risk. We also see our lowest attendance at school in the summer, largely driven by holidays and some parents taking children out of school early to go on holidays as well. And I don't think putting a 2 week half term in October is going to lead to cheaper holidays, because half terms are different all over the country anyway. So holiday companies will know that, Leicestershire maybe go a week early, Staffordshire go the week later, so they cover both weeks with their peak prices at that time of year. More parents may be inclined to take their children out of school early and just ignore the longer finish in the summer, because if other schools are doing something different, for example, and in school it has some impact in that we have less time in school to complete building projects, and we really do sort of generally need that sort of 6 week period. Often we're coming back to school with the building still going on around us, making sure it's ready for the day when the kids come back in. We really do need all that time. And our staff do come into school for the week of the exam results, and that already sort of impacts their holiday window. And this would shorten holidays for the staff in the summer more as well. So those are the perceived drawbacks. Now, we have dismissed the possibility that we might return to school a week earlier in the summer. You'd think, okay, well, just come back a week earlier and then have your week there. I think the August bank holiday sort of messes around with that, and any schools that are not doing that model, I think you'd find that quite difficult as parents. And we've also dismissed the idea of maybe extending the October half term, but not to a full 2 weeks. So you, for example, could make it a 7 day holiday from school or an 8 day holiday, not including the weekends. But we believe that actually we'd still end up with a number of children taking the extra days off and thus not being in school. So I don't think that's really gonna help us as a school with children being here and learning and attending. So we've got four alternatives. They are, we can stay as we are and not go with the Surrey model and just stick at what Thamesmead does, and we have that right to do that. We could adopt the 2 week half term but not lengthen the summer. That's obviously 1 week less of school. We could change our school day to make back the time that we would lose from a week of extra holiday, or we could look at how we change things like the start and end dates of each term and try and make up the time that would be lost throughout the year. And I'll talk through each of these models now. So if we are to stay as we are and not follow the Surrey model, that means we keep a 1 week half term in October. This would keep year 11 in school when we need them most of all, and keep all year groups in school that week. It minimises the break in learning from the summer holidays. So we would feel that, it's a short break and then we get them straight back to school after a week and back on with what we were doing at the end of that first half term. And the students don't perhaps start to sort of switch off, forget what they've learned at the start of the school year. And I think it would probably support working parents better to stick with a week at that time of year rather than stick a second week of holiday in. So those are the positives, I think, of staying as we are. The negatives, the cons, would be it would give us keeps that long autumn term in place that we know does have its downfalls. And that is that staff and students do get tired in this longer term. One of the biggest risks is we wouldn't be aligning with other local schools. And I know, for example, some of our primaries are certainly going to go ahead with the 2 week half term at this point. I know that other secondaries are considering moving across to it as well. And that would mean childcare issues, perhaps for teachers in school who have children in Surrey schools whose children might be off for 2 weeks, but we're expecting them in schools for a week. So that kind of creates me an internal staffing problem. And there's also a risk to recruitment of staff. If our staff are only getting 1 week of half-term holiday, why come and work at Thamesmead when you could get 2 weeks, for example, in another school just a mile or two down the road? So these are things I have to consider. The second option is that we go for the 2 weeks at half term and we don't change our summer. We stick to the existing summer holiday being 6 weeks, and we put the 2 week half term in October in place. The pros of this is it does even out that long autumn term, and maybe that's positive for both student and staff well-being. It could have a positive impact on student attendance, and certainly staff would be less tired in that long term. It might mean more time for families to share holidays and share times together. I know some of you might actually appreciate that. It would mean less misalignment with other local schools around the October holiday. And my perception from talking to other head teachers is that there will be some that won't go all the way to the 28th of July and extend the summer, as Surrey are proposing. It would support parent teachers who have children by putting the 2 week half term in place, so they have less headaches around their own childcare. It would be positive for recruitment because we're maintaining step with other schools and their sort of offer. And many schools do actually achieve high standards of results with a 2 week half term presently. They probably have fewer weeks and fewer days in school than us, but their results don't seem to have been too negatively affected by taking that decision. However, it still means we lose learning for all students. And to me, that's really important, that we're not taking away important learning time. And that's why I've never gone down this road up until this point, where I feel I'm being pushed into a bit of a position where we do have to consider it. And I do think it, as I said, it disrupts learning. I've gone over some of these points already so soon after the summer holiday. As I said, extra childcare for you. Now, this is the one where I think there could still be misalignment in the summer. So, if we still keep the 6 week summer holiday, there may be some schools that do as the Surrey plan is and take children all the way through to the 28th of July. And if you have children in those two schools, then that could be trickier for you because your children are not in school at this sort of similar time. They might be, a week apart rather than just a day or two, as is the case now. And as I said, I don't think it's going to bring much cheaper holidays for parents by going to this. So the third way through is that we take the 2 week half term, but we adapt the school day to accommodate the extra week of holidays. And we can do this in two ways. Looking at the numbers and the minutes and how much time we need to make back, I think we can do it by either putting an extra 30 minutes on each day of school. At the moment, we finish at 2:35, and I think we could move to something like a 3 o'clock or a 3:05 finish every day. Or we could have 3 days a week where we finish 50 minutes later. So, for example, somewhere around 3:20, it could be we stagger that for Key Stage 4 and Key Stage 3. So, Key Stage 3 might have 3 days a week, which is longer, and Key Stage 4 3 days a week, for example. However, and the reason why it's 30 minutes or 50 minutes and this basics, you might go, well, that doesn't add up. There's other things I need to do as well around the school holidays. One thing we try and do at Thamesmead is we try to avoid breaking up midweek or starting school midweek as best as possible. We try to do things in whole week. So we come back where we can on a Monday, we break up where we can on a Friday. Things like Good Friday can get in the way of that if that's, a bank holiday, not inside the school holidays. But where we can do it, that's what we try and do, and that's why we need to build a little bit extra time on top of the just the additional week of holiday. Now, this gives us teaching time throughout the year with Year 11, so we'd have an extra 30 minutes a day or 50 minutes a day, 3 times a week. It would mean that we stay aligned with other schools that are going to the 2-week half term in Surrey. But it would also give us an opportunity to make some improvements to the school day. One of the common complaints I get from parents is that the lunchtime, for example, is too short in school. Students say that also, and it would give us an opportunity to look at our school day and think, okay, well, can we increase lunch by 5 or 10 minutes? Can we make some other changes that would make our school day better as well? And that's factored into the 30 minutes here that I'm adding up to. It would reduce reliance on after school time if we've got a longer school day and a longer lunch, for example. We could put things like clubs and even detentions into lunchtime and reduce that reliance on doing things after school. But it would also allow us to maintain an even half-term structure, avoid that very long terms at either the start or the end of the school year, and avoid short weeks, as I said, breaking up on a Wednesday or a Tuesday, or starting school midweek as well. The cons with this model would be a longer school day, and for students and staff, that might be a bit tougher. To be honest, staff, if they're getting an extra week of holiday in the October half term, that's the payoff for the longer school day. It's quite simply one replaces the other. But for parents, it would be that extra week of holiday that you'd have to take account of, and that's something I'm keen to hear how you feel about this. Would different length days be confusing for students if, for example, we just had 3 days a week, which was slightly longer and extended, and the other two, they still finished at 2:35? Or would students cope with that model? And would there be reduced enthusiasm for kids staying after school, the students staying after school, if we were staying later? Would they still want to stay for clubs, for example, which we have good uptake on at the moment? So those are our thoughts around building the time into the school year overall. The final model is we could make up the time across the year to accommodate the 2-week half term, and you do this by looking at things like inset days and not maybe having the 5 that we're entitled to. You can do this by, if Surrey say schools are going to return on Wednesday the 3rd, you might say, well, we can return on Tuesday the 2nd or Monday the 1st, and that gives you an extra 2 days, for example. So you can see how you can claw some time back. Now, this would preserve learning time, as well as giving us the half term and aligning us with other schools that have the 2-week half term. It might even allow us to get to we'd get to more even term lengths. Again, we'd have hopefully the autumn and the summer term would be pretty much similar sizes, and the spring term is always that bit shorter because we're stuck by Easter and where Easter falls every year and how that moves around. But the cons, so just to make it clear of what this would look like in 26-27, we need to find 8 days in order to do this, and that is quite hard to do. I can find 4 or 5, but finding 8 is tricky, and it will change every year depending on the calendar, and things like where Easter falls, where the bank holidays fall, etc. So it's not a guarantee that it'll work every year. We would lose important training time for staff, which we really value as a school, and I'd be worried about taking training staff time away from staff, particularly when we're more reliant on staff from overseas. For example, in the current climate, training is really important for us. And it would lead to more short weeks. We'd have less control over where we we're able to prevent and stop that happening, which is what we're able to do at the moment with a little bit of wiggle around where the Surrey term dates are set. And also some of those days that we claw back, we can't guarantee that we'll claw them back when year 11 are going to be in school or in time for them to benefit. And as I said, using a week of year 11 is one of my big concerns about this whole model and situation. So next steps, what we're going to do next is I will be issuing a parent survey at the end of the week to understand your views on this. We've got a face-to-face meeting in school on Thursday. Most parents have opted for this online meeting, but there is a face-to-face, so I'll go ahead with that. Once I've done both meetings, I'll issue the survey for you to complete and fill that in for me as we get towards the end of this week. So certainly from Wednesday onwards, we should be able to send that out to you, and you can let us know what your views are. I'm going to present to staff next week. I'm wanted to talk to parents first, so I can go to staff with what the parent feedback is, because I think they really need to understand how this is going to impact our parents, rather than sort of simply make a decision based on what we feel as staff is best for the students and best for the school. Students, I do want to listen to the students' thoughts. I've got a feeling that most students are going to vote for more holidays and less time in school. But I know that some will actually take it very seriously and be responsible in their answers and may have some good ideas as well. So we'll listen to the students and their thoughts in school, and then I'll use all that feedback to decide a proposal. So we'll consider all the views coming in. Now, that's the end of the presentation. A bit of a whistle stop. If there's clarity needed on any points, or if there's any specific questions, I can now open the Q&A box and the chat box. And perhaps my colleagues, if you want to turn on the mic as well, if there's anything you think hasn't been answered that you need me to address, we can go through that now. If you think you've heard all you need to hear, that you don't have to stick around for the Q&A now. But thank you for your time this evening. I hope you appreciate me consulting with you. I know there are many schools where I don't think this process is happening, but certainly for me, it's important to give you the opportunity to share your views, and help that inform what we decide to do. Okay, so I consider the formal part of the meeting closed, and then we'll take any questions or answers that you might want raising now.
This one. And not for us in the final.
Mr. Rees, just a couple of questions that are coming now might be easy to answer verbally. I think we would obviously make transport aware of our changes like we would do through any changes to school day.
Yeah.
Obviously that'd be slightly harder with the train timetables, but the buses, we'd have some consultation with them, wouldn't we?
Yeah. I mean, whenever Bishop One changed their school day a couple of years ago, for example, the bus, actually we had to change our buses because they changed their school day. So I think, we'd be in a position where we just inform the buses and we'd have to work with them to get the service to work for us. What I'd reassure parents is when we're changing a school day, we do take the train times into consideration, and we try and plan that the students have got enough time to get to the train. We wouldn't want them rushing and put themselves at risk to try and catch a train quickly, but at the same time we don't want them hanging around too long for the next one either. So we will take that into consideration with any decisions we take. Were there any further questions that you wanted to flag at this point, Mr. Watson?
No, I think we've covered all the questions so far.
Right.
It's unsatisfactory, but we've got no gaps as far as I'm aware.
Okay. So, all right, I can't see anything new coming in. Okay. Well, I'll just stay online for a few minutes more. I can see that we've still got 32 people in the chat in the meeting. So if there's, we'll wait until people have logged out if there are questions to be asked. But finally from me, if you've got any comments that you want to send in, just generally, you will get the questionnaire and a chance to explain your decisions in that. But if you have written comments that you just want to put in, send them to info@thamesmead.surrey.sch.uk. And I thank you all for giving up the time this evening to be involved. Thank you.
Bill, I think it's just staff now.
Yeah, it is. It is. Okay. Anything? Thanks for doing that, everyone. Really
That's right.
appreciate it.
Shall we chat in the corridor?
Yeah, yeah. Anything that you think? I'm just trying to see how we save the chat. I think I can do it through the stop sharing.
Just mindful
I can
that this
do.
conversation might be recorded as well.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. I'll end now. Okay.
Well done, everyone.